Hello and welcome back to Mr. Carrow Plays FM26. Today we're going to look at transfers. We'll look at 3 different ways to help us navigate the transfer market and get the most out of those signings. Roll the footage. Okay, so our game has loaded. Now we want to go over to our recruitment screen and we want to go into TransferRoom in. Now ignore everything on the right hand side, although that is going to become relevant in a second. But what we want to do is we want to create requirements. Now, kind of bizarrely, this seems to be a very good way of getting players that you might not see in your player search. Maybe your scouting range isn't particularly high, or there could be various reasons why players don't appear. However, this seems to be an effective way of doing it. And I will show an example over here. So what you do is you click on your create requirements. Now, this is essentially saying that you are looking for either any player or a specific player. Now, I believe in most cases, if not always, actually in this particular one, it makes you select a position. You can do many positions, I guess. So we're going to select a striker for this example. Now, if you wanted a role in possession, you would go in whatever you choose. I'm going to go center forward, and then you've got to choose if you want it to be a transfer, loan, or transfer and loan. And then obviously you're going to select an age between. For me, I always go under 30, so I'm going to put it on 30, for example. And then playing time. Now, this is interesting because if you're wanting to replace a starter, you might want to put in, say, important player. If you're trying to replace that maybe star player who you're about to sell for several millions of pounds, then obviously you're going to select your star player. And that is what we're going to click on today. Now, what you'll do, if you had clicked submit, which I'm not going to because I'm already like Blue P, or I've already got an example ready to go. So you've got this here. I actually put important player in this example. But what happens is a couple of days pass, and then you start getting responses. Now, like I said at the start of this example, there are lots of players in here that you can't see in your player search. And also, realistically, these are players that want to come because they have responded to the advert. So using this function, we can go over to our responses. I believe you can click on it, but we're going to go over to responses here, and you can see that it lists out all of the players that have responded to the advert. Now, you can see that there are lots of examples in here. Weirdly, sometimes it's got poaching. I'm assuming that player down there, maybe he can play in multiple. Yeah, he can play in all those striking positions. But what is actually more important about this feature, perhaps, is that if you look at them, pretty much exclusively, all of them are being recommended. There are none in there that are not being recommended. So we've kind of bypassed scouting to some extent in regards to the way that we've done this. But it is incredible the amount of players and the good players that seem to come through this system. So I would highly recommend using this. And then all you would do is obviously go through the negotiating period, and then you would hopefully sign that player. And you can also do that in regards to get selling players. Now, I did a video at the very start when this was released to kind of introduce this method. Now I've had a chance to play. I actually don't personally find the transfer out as effective, despite the fact it's offering a lot of suggestions there, and sometimes you do get transfers from that. So if you were to, for example, click on the first one and you wanted to offer Douglas out, all you have to go down there is click on Douglas there, and then you put in the fee or whatever that you want for that player. Then there you have a chance to respond. I'm not going to do that. This is not a player that I actually want to sell, but that would be how you would do that. Like I say, it hasn't been the most successful for me. However, I have seen people have had some success, and maybe in the loans, for example, it's worth definitely pursuing. Now, the next thing I wanted to show you is how to see if players will want to come or not. So what we're going to do is we're going to clear everything that I had set in that, and we do that by clicking that left-hand button there, and we're going to apply, and then we're going to see where we stand. Now, it's already selected, but it is interesting because typically you'll have transfer and loan would be the first thing that you would see. And maybe in there, the typical thing that people do is click doubtful, and then they would press OK, and it will pick a selection of players. In this case, the 12,178 players available. But the interesting thing is, and I've had a lot of success with, if you get rid of, for example, if you go click off there, and you go to transfer and loan, and you go not considered, normally we would see that as a bad thing. Normally we would see not considered as definitely 100% won't want to come to our team. Now, the reason why that's not necessarily the case is because it is your assistant manager who is populating this list. And believe it or not, they make mistakes. So if you click not considered, you can see that that jumps to 22,626. Now, it is worth pointing out a lot of those players won't want to come because that's the nature of what we're seeing with the not considered. However, if you were, for example, wanting to look at free agents coming up, now I'm at the very start of the season, so I might have to put in, for example, 6 months, and I might get the MLS players going out of contract and the Swedish players. But the interesting thing here is you can see that there are a lot of those players. Now, if we go back to our considered again, and we pick in our transfer and loan, and then we pick doubtful, it'd be interesting to see how many disappear. So almost half of them disappeared. But as we know, that may not be the case. So it is worth putting in not considered, and you can bring that list back up. Now, the list didn't increase fantastically, so it is worth pointing out that maybe some of those players just don't want to come or wouldn't consider it. However, if that list was a lot lower, say there was 10 players, for example, when everything is considered, and there may be in a doubt for transfers to come, but then you put on non-considered and it comes back with 30, that is not a substantially more amount of players to look through. So it is worth considering that. Now,
a few moments later.
Okay, so I have loaded up my Sheffield Wednesday save. This is because I want to show you one last final tip, and that is how to see if you're likely to get work permits accepted. Now, you can see at the second our list is 460 people big. What we need to do is we need to go, and it's already added in here, for example, but you can add it by going to condition, and I believe it's transfers, and then you want to click on work permit chance. You could also go work permit required, which would help you in a league that you're not certain about. But we know in England, for example, work permits are much harder to get. So we do want to maybe check that out before we go to try and signing a player, or even potentially having it on all of the time, to be honest. Although I think in a previous video, someone complained about that. However, to be honest, why even bid on players that you're not going to get a work permit for, unless they're kind of young players where it's not as relevant. So if we highlight our button now, watch that list drops considerably. We're down to 192, players. And the reason why that is important to us is because if we don't want to waste a lot of time in the transfer market, if we've kind of got a lower budget, whatever, this is a really easy way of finding out if players are likely to join and what the complication would be. And then if we do, for argument's sake, maybe we do put on and see if it makes any difference for work permit required. And again, it actually has helped us with that. I wasn't sure it would. I wondered if it would just say yes to all of them. But no, actually, if you put work permit required and then maybe double up with that, it will actually help you get down to 192, which I guess makes perfect sense. But actually, if you wanted to know if work permits are required and only that before you went to the next search, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but maybe you would want to do that, then that is fantastic as well. Now, if you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe. Hit the notification button to see when videos are released. Thank you and goodbye.